Well, there, I've still called the meeting to order, and now the mic is on. That'll make it better. Let's see, I do need this. So I understand we have no regrets, Madam Clerk, and it's time for declarations of pecuniary interest. Councillor Adams?
I have a non-pecuniary interest to declare in item C1. My brother works for one of the companies that's named in the report. It's not covered under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act, but it is covered under our Code of Conduct for Council. As a result, I'll continue to take part in the discussion when the item comes forward, but our Code of Conduct requires that I note the issue.
Okay. Thank you for the declaration. Would you like to follow that with a motion to move into Committee of the Whole? Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Hutchins, all in favor? And that carries. Our first item is the consent item, the assumption of the subdivisions detailed in the report that you have, and the confidential consent item that Councillor Adams just referred to. May I have a motion? Councillor Lapworth. All right. These are consent items. There's a consent item is something for which there's really no controversy or issue with it. And if there's no speakers to the motion, I'll call the vote. All in favor? Opposed, if any? And the consent items are approved. Now we arrive at our public hearing item, and this is a public meeting and recommendation report for Councillor Dudek.
Your Worship, I wonder if we could, the discussion item number 3, I think was going to be fairly quick to dispense of. I anticipate we'll probably have quite a lengthy discussion for the other item.
All right. Councillor Dudek makes a good point. Are there any members of the public here with information for council or questions about item number 3, which is a recommendation meeting report on the Fernbrook Homes subdivision on Dorval at Tudor Avenue? If you're interested in that item, you know what it is. I'm not seeing anyone. So Councillor Dudek is moving approval of this item. It's a non-controversial small change to a subdivision to permit a change in the way garages are deployed on the land, and that's supposed to assist the existing residents to get more quickly through the remainder of the construction period for this area. With no further comments apparent, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? And Councillor Dudek, your item is carried. And now we're going to have our public hearing item. So this is the public meeting and recommendation report for the, I hope I don't say this wrong, Simjine proposal for a 20-story tower at Lakeshore and East Street. And if you give your attention to Melissa, our current planning planner, she will offer the public a synopsis of the report, which I know all of council have read very carefully.
Thank you, Mayor Burton and members of council. As stated, the purpose of this meeting is to hold a statutory public meeting and present a staff recommendation on an official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment submitted by Simjin Inc. for lands located at 2266 Lakeshore Road West and 83 East Street. The application proposes to allow a mixed-use building up to 20 stories in height containing 144 dwelling units with retail and service commercial uses at grade. The report can be found on page 7 of tonight's agenda. The subject lands consist of 2 properties located on the southeast corner of Lakeshore Road West and East Street. This air photo identifies the application area and its context with the surrounding area. Surrounding land uses include a 17-story condominium apartment building to the south, a single-story commercial plaza west of East Street, a single-story commercial use north of Lakeshore Road West, and a 2-story residential use to the east. Livable Oakville includes the property within the boundaries of the Bronte Village growth area and designates the property as Main Street 1, as well as lands eligible for bonusing. This designation permits buildings up to 4 stories in height, and in certain locations, including the subject property, an additional 2 stories of height is available as a result of bonusing, for a maximum building height of 6 stories. The applicant has applied for an official plan amendment to change the existing land use designation from Main Street 1 with bonusing policies to urban core with bonusing policies that would have the effect of securing permissions for a 12-story building, with bonusing provisions allowing for an additional 8 stories in exchange for the provision of community benefits. Further to the requested redesignation of the subject property, the applicant requests that an alternative parkland dedication arrangement is applied to the subject lands. The subject property is zoned Main Street 1 by the zoning bylaw. The proposal requires a zoning bylaw amendment to rezone the lands from Main Street 1 to urban core, with regulations specific to the subject property related to building height, building setback, and reduced visitor and commercial parking. The zoning bylaw amendment would also require a Section 37 agreement as a means of implementing the bonusing provisions being sought under the official plan amendment. The applicant seeks approval to permit the lands to be developed for a mixed-use building of up to 20 stories in height containing 144 residential units with 767 square meters of retail and service commercial uses located at the grade and second floor levels. 4.5 levels of underground parking are proposed to be accessed from a driveway off of East Street. 2 open spaces are proposed at grade. The first is a privately owned but publicly accessible urban square, which is 301 square meters in area and located at the corner of Lakeshore Road West and East Street. In addition, a private amenity space, labeled as the Garden Courtyard, is proposed to be located on the east side of the site. The 2-story podium contains retail and service commercial uses oriented towards the urban square at ground and second floor levels. The following matters were considered during the analysis of the application and preparation of the staff recommendation: the physical context of the subject site and the character of the surrounding neighborhoods, conformity with the objectives of the Livable Oakville Plan, directions being established through the Bronte Village Growth Area Review, the outcome of the technical review, comments from the public, and plans and studies submitted in support of the application. The evaluation of the proposed development included an assessment of the role of the subject property within the Main Street district and the physical context and character of the surrounding neighborhoods. In this case, there are 2 distinct neighborhoods in proximity to the subject property, which can be classified as lands located within the boundary of the Bronte Village growth area, and a separate high-density residential neighborhood to the east and south that's located south of the boundary of the growth area. The subject lands are located within the defined Bronte Village growth area Main Street district, which is located along the length of Lakeshore Road between Bronte Road and East Street. 2 main gateway intersections are identified on Lakeshore Road West, one at Bronte Road and the other at East Street. Under existing policies, the Bronte Road gateway is anticipated to be characterized by buildings up to 8 stories in height, while the East Street gateway could be developed, although at a lower scale, up to 6 stories in height. The intent of the development concept for the Bronte Village Main Street district is to allow for a focal point for mixed-use growth while providing for relatively modest change and stability in existing land uses. In contrast, the lands immediately to the south and further east of the subject property are located outside of the boundary of the Bronte Village growth area and are designated high-density residential. Although the Main Street district and the high-density residential neighborhood to the south are within close geographic proximity to one another, from a planning perspective, these 2 areas are considered distinct neighborhoods in both form and in function. The existing apartments were developed prior to the enactment of the town's 1981 official plan and maintain a tower-in-the-park form of development. Unlike the urbanized, low-rise, linear-built form anticipated in the Main Street district, these apartment developments feature a lower floor area ratio, given that the buildings are set back from the street and maintain open landscape areas to mitigate the increased building height. Although the buildings are located in proximity to the subject property, they are outside the defined boundary of the Bronte Village growth area and are designated high-density residential and livable Oakville. Existing development within the high-density residential neighborhood is not an appropriate reference point for potential building heights in Bronte Village, as the lands are located outside of the Bronte Village growth area and are therefore subject to a different policy framework. The proposed development has not been designed to respond to the development objectives for Bronte Village, the urban design guidelines contained in Livable Oakville, or the design directions identified in the town's urban design manual. Bronte Village is one of the town's 6 growth areas. In comparison to Midtown Oakville, the Uptown Core, Palermo Village, and Kerr Village, Bronte Village is the smallest growth area, intended to achieve a modest amount of growth to contribute to the town's overall growth targets. The proposed 20-story development represents a significant departure from the anticipated low-rise character of the Bronte Village Main Street District. The minimum height permissions set out in the land use designations of Livable Oakville provide sufficient opportunities to meet the town's minimum intensification targets over time. The proposal requests redesignation of the site to Urban Core. The Urban Core designation allows mixed-use development with a maximum building height of 12 stories. Areas with the highest concentration of lands designated Urban Core are found in the growth areas intended to manage the highest level of intensification in the town, including Midtown Oakville and the Uptown Core. A redesignation to Urban Core in this location would have the impact of eroding the integrity of the low-rise development concept for the Bronte Village Main Street District. This slide shows a bird's-eye view of the proposed development in context with the existing Lakeshore Road streetscape and the high-density residential neighborhood located to the south. The existing and emerging policies for the subject property provide an appropriate level of development for the subject property as a gateway, while taking into account the development concept for Bronte Village. Successful gateway design should create a sense of arrival and also be characteristic of what one can expect in the district. A 20-story building is not required or desirable in this location to create a gateway. The existing height permissions for the site, together with the design directions outlined in the town's urban design manual, would achieve an appropriate and acceptable gateway development. This slide shows a view of the massing of the proposed development from the perspective of a driver heading east along Lakeshore Road at Nelson Street. Although the streetscape as shown consists of existing 1- and 2-story buildings, existing permissions currently permit buildings between 2 to 4 stories along the Main Street District. Aside from the fundamental issue of building height, the proposed building design does not implement design directions for tall and mid-rise buildings contained in the town's urban design manual. Design directions related to the height of the building base, the length of the tower floor plate, tower spacing, massing, form, orientation, and scale are not satisfied by the proposed building design. These directions are important to ensure the impacts of a tall or mid-rise building on surrounding properties are minimized. This slide shows a rendering of the proposed building from Lakeshore Road. The Bronte Village Main Street District is intended to continue to develop as a low-rise, grade-related mixed-use street. Livable Oakville sets out urban design policies for built form that support creating pedestrian-oriented streetscapes. While the inclusion of grade-related commercial units and the provision of an urban square offer an opportunity to create an animated streetscape, the siting of the commercial uses along the Lakeshore Road West frontage behind a screen wall limit connectivity to the commercial space and the urban square. The location of the screen wall acts as a visual and physical barrier, limiting connectivity between the proposed development and the public realm. In addition, portions of the footprint of the proposed 20-story tower are set back 0 meters from Lakeshore Road West. The proposed design and limited accessibility of commercial space does not allow for an active or inviting building interface along Lakeshore Road West, which is intended to be built at a human scale and serve as a pedestrian-oriented main street. The Bronte Growth Area Review has been sufficiently completed to provide direction on the merits of the applications. A draft direction proposes to redesignate the subject property to Main Street 2, which would allow an increased building height of 6 stories, with an additional 4 stories available as a result of bonusing, for a maximum building height of 10 stories. Although the subject property has been identified as a location where additional building height may be appropriate, the proposed 20-story building far exceeds the permissions contemplated through the Bronte Growth Area Review. In this regard, the proposal does not satisfy the existing policy objectives for new development in Bronte Village or emerging policy directions for the subject property. For reasons stated in the staff report and tonight's presentation, staff is of the opinion the proposal does not satisfy the policy objectives for new development in Bronte Village, the urban design policies contained in Livable Oakville, or emerging policy directions for the subject property, and therefore recommend denial of the application. Staff put forth the following recommendation as shown for council's consideration.
Thank you, Melissa, for a very good synopsis of the report. Council, are there questions for Melissa? Councilor O'Meara.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you, Melissa, I'm wondering what the initial height was at the pre-consultation.
The initial pre-consultation held with staff, the applicant demonstrated a building height of 18 stories.
And can you tell me what the staff's comments would have been with regards to the 18 stories prior to them submitting their official application?
The directions were similar to the justification that you heard in the staff report tonight, which was that what was being proposed was inconsistent with the objectives of our Bronte Village Main Street District, and that the height should be brought down, as well as the Livable by Design, Urban Design Manual's directions needed to be followed.
And then can you tell me what the actual formal application came in at again?
The application that was submitted was for a 20-story building.
Okay, thank you very much. And one last question was, part of our Livable Oakville plan very much stresses the cultural heritage, the sense of community neighborhoods, and contributing to the historic character of Bronte Village. Can you tell me, from a planning perspective or urban design guideline, how you feel or how that was measured?
Can you rephrase the question a bit?
Well, part of our Livable Oakville plan is to, a number of them is to enhance the character, the cultural heritage, the sense of community neighborhoods. Can you tell me through your experience or in your professional opinion how the design before us has addressed those needs that we asked for in our Livable Oakville plan?
In our opinion, the design would not enhance the character of the Bronte Village whatsoever.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councilor O'Meara. Other councilors with questions? All right. Madam Clerk, would you call the first registered delegation?
The first delegation speaking to this item is Mr. Ted Walker.
Good evening, Mr. Walker. We have your written
councilors.
submission here on our desks as well, and we welcome you and we look forward to your information.
Thank you. I have two questions for you tonight. The first question can be answered very easily by raising your hands, and I know you're all good at that. The last question I'll ask at the very end because it's going to be more difficult.
Sir,
No.
I have to stop you right there. This is a public hearing under the Planning Act. We're here to receive your information, and we're not here to, basically it's my job to ask people to show their hands, not yours, I guess is what I have to find a funny way to tell you. So the most useful thing you could tell council would be if you had a chance to make yourself familiar with the report that's before council recommending denial of the application, and do you support or oppose the recommendation to council? That's the most important information council needs to hear from delegations tonight.
You're not saying I can't ask a question about it.
This is not really a question and answer period. This is a tell us what you think, are you for or against kind of thing.
Well, I'm definitely against, really,
Let me,
but it's a certain point.
so I gather that you're against it, good. ask me your question, and I'll see if I can find a way to get you an answer.
Well, the first question was going to be, I'm sure that all of you have read everything about the subject that you could possibly do, seen all the pictures, the drawings, and the paintings and everything out. My question was going to be, have you been down to see the site actually?
I believe we've all been down there to see it. Your other question?
Well, I would like to see if your opinion of the site agrees with mine, if I could give you my opinion of what the site looks like.
We're happy to have your opinion. It's my job to get council's opinion at the end after we've heard all the information.
Okay.
And so it would, if we were to answer that question before we've heard everybody, it would kind of impeach our decision at the end. So for that reason, I won't indulge that. But we will happily hear your opinion.
I would like to describe the site the way I see it. Is that possible? Okay. Down at the site, you've all been there, obviously, right on the corner, right on the very front of the lot right now, there is a cement wall going along, and on it is engraved, "Welcome to Bronte Village." This is ideal situation for the sign. I'm sure it's going to be moved later, but this is where Bronte Village actually starts. And if you look along the road to the west, all the way over to Bronte Road on either side, it's lined with stores and businesses of all descriptions that handle everything that you could possibly want to live there. You don't even need a car. On the way back, come on back to the site, grab a coffee at Tim Hortons or McDonald's there. There's a bench right on the corner facing on this site, if you've all seen it. Sit there for a moment. Have a look at the stoplights that are, the way they work, the intersection. It works really well, the flow of traffic both ways, cars and pedestrians. And pedestrians, while you're sitting there enjoying the view, you'll notice that an awful lot of them are senior citizens, like myself. I'm a little more nimble than some of them, but these traffic lights handle them all well. They don't have any problems. There's even buttons to push to bring on the light. There's even a sound effect that goes on and tells you the walk light is now on. Actually, I think they should change it to something else different at the time, like safe is a good 4-letter word, or in my case, move your ass, you old fart, something like that. Okay, everything works fine, and they let it by. Now, I would like you to look in the other direction, towards the third line that's east, down there, and I'd like you to pick out a spot, and it's exactly 125 yards that way. I say yards because I don't know what meters are or anything like that. I'm a golfer, I paced it off, I know exactly how far it is. It's a 7-iron for me. That's where, now I'm going to tell you exactly what's at that spot, and that, if you walk down there and you look at it, you're right at the driveway of the Oakville Senior Citizens Residence where I live. It's a wonderful place to live. There's about between 350 and 400 people, seniors like myself, living there, and we really enjoy it. It's got everything we need. And putting an X on that spot on your map is going to show you a problem that's coming your way. The minute the construction of any site, of any building that you manage to say okay to starts, they're going to close the sidewalk off on the south side, so the seniors will not be able to get to the stoplights. They are going to go straight across Lakeshore Road. Now picture the scene. Seniors, walking, and they'll use the stop, look, and listen thing, and then they'll wander out across the road. Have you seen, the traffic down there, and they won't have any other place to go except straight across the road because they can't get to the stoplight the other way. Now, this is a fact. That sidewalk is going to be closed the minute construction starts. And it's going to be closed for, a couple of years while they build the thing? So, my question is, and I'll end it on that, this is a very terrible situation that is going to blow up and be, I'm watching the clock too, Your Honor. It's what's the expression? It's going to hit the fan. And my question is, are you going to look into the problem now or wait until it happens? That's it.
All right, well, thank you very much for your information. If you read the recommendation on the screen above, which I understood you support this recommendation, and if this recommendation passes, I guess you won't have a concern about pedestrians. Is that right?
Yes, you're right.
Okay, thanks very much for your information, sir.
You're welcome.
Madam Clerk, the next delegation.
The next delegation this evening is Catherine Marshall.
Ms. Marshall, welcome. Council looks forward to your information.
Now, can someone tell me how the PowerPoint can be forwarded?
Looks like help is on the way.
Great.
Just these arrows here.
Okay, so where's my presentation?
Where's your presentation? Which one is it? Is it that one or?
I'm not sure. I would have thought it'd be in order. Okay, that looks like that was probably.
Okay.
Okay,
So
so.
that, you
I'll
could
go
use
on
that, or you could use this as well. These two ones here.
Thank you. Sorry for that technical delay, Mr. Mayor, councilors. I'm here today as a concerned citizen from Bellier Street and somebody who is part of the renaissance of Bronte. Bronte is suddenly filling with many new people who have a vision and a hope for the community. And this renaissance is happening on the side streets. But this is a very important development because since the Renaissance really took hold, this is going to be the first opportunity for Main Street to start to manifest what is going on in Bronte. So picture this, a shady, windy village street, looks so inviting. You go down this and you think, I wonder what is at the end of it. On Lakeshore, going east, you suddenly come across this panorama, this inviting, exciting vista with sailboats and lake and marinas and all kinds of inviting visuals. And then I've taken the rendering and superimposed it on Google Street View so that you can see what kind of a view this building would have going west on Lakeshore. And actually, because I had very limited capabilities, I'm not a graphic artist by any stretch of the imagination. This thing is not in scale at all. This one actually is a little bit more in scale. And what you see is something so dense, so obstructive to the visuals, so, congestive looking, that it's a complete turnoff. And that's why I am here to speak today, because when I saw this, I was so appalled. Because I have a vision of Bronte of being an experience. And so far, Bronte has been an experience for me. I walk everywhere. I work, live, and play in Bronte. And I'm there because I bought into this village concept that was proposed about the same time that I moved in. And I do not want to see a developer coming in and starting to play games. And my concern is that today is only step one of a series of games that will go on talking about trading off amenities for the community with density and not appreciating that this site is so strategic to the future of Bronte that I'm making the proposal to you that you need to hold the ground on the village plan on this site in order to ensure the viability of the whole plan. If that site falls to 10 stories, I think the whole thing is gone. I'm going to talk about congestion. I'm sure that other people will be talking about congestion. So what I'm showing you here is a northbound arrow going up east and then north-south. I want to point out to you that that red triangle is an easement that currently exists at that intersection. And the one thing that I think is very important for you to know is that at that 7-Eleven right now, because that easement is still completely intact as a triangle, and there is no right-hand turning lane there, people are cutting through the 7-Eleven gas station like crazy to get off of the congestion on Lakeshore. Do you know why Lakeshore is not overly congested? It's because the cut-through traffic on Sovereign and Bellier is becoming crazy. If you allow anything that is significantly dense at this intersection, you are going to be creating a serious bottleneck that is going to really incite far more of a cut-through problem. Now, a member of my delegation who was supposed to be here tonight, who instead had to send a written report, wanted to convey to you how serious the problems are already on Bellier Street. There's a school there. There's been a person killed on our street by somebody not stopping at the stop sign, ostensibly cutting through our neighborhood. This is a serious problem that is very critical, relating only to this intersection. The last thing, oh, wrong direction. The last thing I want to say to you is that you are going to be under more and more pressure from developers and also from the municipal government to increase the density, not only in Bronte, but all over Oakville. And I have to tell you that visual observation suggests that Bronte has already taken its fair share of density. We are suffering from congestion. And so you've got to be particularly careful about how the Bronte Village Plan is implemented in order not to create a really, really serious bottleneck, because there already is too much density in Bronte. In closing, there's an opportunity to do something very, very special in Bronte. You approach it from the north, it looks like you're entering an old-time village. You approach it from the west, you look like you're coming into an incredible vista. People today are becoming so digitized, so virtual. They crave experience. And Bronte can become one of those incredible experiences that will add to the economy of Oakville in a way that putting up a very dense building can never do. You create an experience and you will be drawing people from all over the GTA, just like Port Credit does. And Port Credit, I think, should be the model for what we want to do in Bronte. The merchants in Port Credit are very, very healthy because they get an incredible amount of tourist traffic. And tourism is a really very viable thing for Bronte and Bronte's economic future. So please, do not destroy it by treating this particular piece of property as a commodity that can be bonused and can be negotiated with to create far too much density without adequate setbacks, and to basically create a fortress feel as you enter what should be an inviting village. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Ms. Marshall. Wait, don't run quite so fast. I have a question for you, please. Were you able to familiarize yourself with the report before council tonight?
Yes, I was.
And did you take notice of the staff recommendation to deny the application?
Yes, I did.
Are you in support or opposition to the staff recommendation?
In support.
Thank you very much for your information. Madam Clerk, the next delegation.
The next delegation this evening is Gladys Pluis.
Ms. Lewis?
Pluis.
Lewis?
Oh, here she is. Pluis. Good evening,
Lewis.
Your Worship.
Welcome, Ms. Pluis. If you'll just let the microphone be adjusted for you there, that'll give us a
Okay.
chance to hear you.
Good evening, Your Worship. Good evening, regional councillors and town councillors. I'm not going to bore you with the points that I have in the differences of the proposed condo compared to the existing ones. The only thing I want to point out on that right now is that the existing buildings have 8-foot ceilings per story, and the proposed condo has 10-foot ceilings per condo, or per story. So therefore, if you had 10 stories, it's actually going to be 12. If you had 15 stories, it'll be 18. And on top of that, there would be a couple of stories of roof equipment. So I won't read you the rest of the things because you all know them, and I'm in support of your denial. But I do want to draw your attention to, I have some experience with a condo on Locust and Lakeshore in Burlington. I own a condo there. The building is 12 stories high, and there's only 62 units in it. Below it, there is commercial. So Lakeshore and Locust, it's the same situation as you have with East Street and Lakeshore. And I want to point out to you some of the problems we have. We have commercial brings deliveries. Delivery staff will not park underground. They'll park on the street. They bring cars that drop off workers, and they park on the street. Customers using the commercial, and should these services have a waiting room, where do they park but on the street? Maintenance trades servicing the condo's tenants, where do they park? They're on the street. The garbage pickup and other city road staff utilizing East Street are on the street. Monthly maintenance contract servicing. You've got fire, electrical, plumbing, cleaning, landscapers, windows. Where do they park? On the street. East Street is 2 lanes. Any parking impedes visibility trying to enter East Street. Sorry, I've made a mistake here. Any parking impedes the visibility trying to enter or exit from the garages on East Street. There's a safety problem for the cars and the pedestrians coming out of the garage. Adjacent garages could be blocked at times as a result in trying to get trucks moved, and a bylaw officer may be needed. The larger the condo, the more traffic it brings in services, cars, and visitors. It's been noted that the marina uses East Street during the spring to the fall. The safety of seniors is compromised by increased traffic at the main gateway on East Street, which is the shortest route to the village. The area is highly intensified with condos and townhouses with very few dwellings. Some of the seniors have disabilities and are slow walkers. At present, the stoplight is geared to keep traffic moving on Lakeshore, and some of these seniors need more time to get across the road. Young people need condos near good bus and GO train services. Young people are not in and out of their condos twice a day as suggested at one of the meetings. They are in and out often. They have visitors and parties. The type of condo This type of condo needs to be in a location that supports their needs. I would suggest the developer go back to the drawing board, lower the ceilings to 8 feet per story, enlarge the size of the condos, and reduce the number of condos, which means less cars and traffic. Allow 1 commercial floor instead of 2, reduce the levels of underground parking, and reduce the number of stories. I sold my house in Burlington 1 year ago to move to Oakville. I wanted to avoid all the traffic problems downtown and all the high-rise condos on Lakeshore that were contributing to this problem. I moved to Bronte because I felt Bronte was being planned better than Burlington, who is pro-development and is going to be a mini Toronto. The village was already highly intensified, but very well done with townhouses and condos with spacious grounds. Other factors were the lake and the view. My vision for Bronte is to continue doing your strip malls at street level with condos above 6 to 8 stories high. If this is done, your intensification will be spread out so it doesn't sit on one corner that becomes a white elephant. The traffic will spread out on different streets, and most importantly, it will be safer for all concerned. Add more specialty shops, restaurants, unique shops to help retail, and utilize the park on the water with some weekend events. Bear in mind, we still need an up-to-date grocery store in the plaza for seniors to walk to. Do know that the people living here have more experience with the day-to-day problems in the area. Thank you for your time and reassessing this future development.
Thank you very much for your information. Do you want to provide a copy of your remarks to the clerk for our files, or do you
Yes,
want
I
to
can.
go with what you just said? You're going to provide a copy? Thank you very much for that.
Actually,
I know we have counselors
didn't
here who
read
like to
this
have that.
because they know that, and I support
Okay.
the denial.
You were
Thank
very
you.
good to mention that. Thank you very much. Madam Clerk, the next registered delegation? I said thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
The next registered delegation is Shelley Thornborough, Vice President of the Bronte Village Residents Association.
Ms. Thornborough, welcome. I'll lightly suggest that you were trying to delay your appearance by sending her back up. But we're interested in what you and your Residents Association have for us here tonight, and we look forward to your information.
Thank you, Your Worship, regional and town councilors, town staff, and members of the audience. I'm not going to go into all of the detail that we delegated to at the last statutory meeting because I think a lot of the information contained has been digested fully by members of council and a lot of our community. What I want to impress today is the main points in considering the site application in its current form tonight, and our call to deny the site application as it stands. So, the BVRA supports development with design, built form, setback, and height that does not impair public safety, but complements the existing area, the culture, and the charm of Bronte Village, embodying development principles which resonate with the heritage and the culture of what we hold so dearly. And those development principles need to be smart, responsible, sustainable, and community-centric. And community-centric is a very important principle because this particular application is sited geographically very close to an area of sensitive land use where we have a concentration of seniors. And this is a very dire concern, not only through the construction, but after the construction phase. The site application represents over-intensification with the proposed development of a mixed-use 20-story condominium on a footprint of 3/4 of a hectare, is it an acre, representing over-intensification on the basis of base plate to footprint ratio, a built form that starts to encroach on the adjacent building along East Street, 4.5 levels of underground parking, accommodating over 300 parking bays to support 144 condominium units, shadowing effect on 2 adjacent properties, and one in particular on the group home adjacent to it on Lakeshore Road West, and the proposed limitation of bonusing benefits is prescribed through Section 37. We've heard tonight that the area is already experiencing high traffic volumes, congestion, and a lot of associated issues. And these will be further impacted by this development to a larger magnitude. The development does not respect sensitive land use and poses a risk to senior safety and well-being during and after construction, overshadowing the group home, and lack of setbacks impairs public safety negotiating the nearby traffic intersection. We were very pleased to see the visuals put forward by the planning department, and we thought that we would also bring some visuals because it's something that we've spoken about and looked at different maps, but it's very different to actually see it. Sometimes a picture speaks 1,000 words. And these pictures were taken from 2170 Marine Drive, which is located at Ennisclair 2. And it already shows the level of high density where we have 8 high-story buildings in the area. And actually, the area which is outside of the Bronte growth area, growth area, southeast of this development, is subject to very few single dwellings. So, in addition to this, really represents a large form of over-intensification for the site. And you can see by the picture we've got a lot of high to medium density dwellings in the area and the surrounding area, which really speaks to the level of intensification that this area cannot support any further intensification, especially to the level of 20 stories. Finally, we want to point out that we advocate community benefits. Any bonusing towards derived from this application should be toward community benefits and green space improvements for the area. We've identified some of these through the growth area review, and some of them are coming forward as far as the Oakville Master Harbors Plan. We encourage the applicant to work with the town of Oakville and with the community towards consensus and development that is responsible and befitting of the area. This is a very pivotal decision tonight. For Bronte, for the area, and it tests the strength of the Livable Oakville Plan and the manner in which Council will stand by the plan and enact it. We call for the denial of this application in its current form to preserve this minor gateway into Bronte Village and to the Bronte Harbor, which we consider the jewel in Oakville. And as an association, we support the majority call from our community for a Main Street 1 designation, believing that this is most appropriate. But what we would like to impress upon Council and members of the Planning Department, that we would like to see it at least capped at the Main Street 2 designation to ensure that no further zoning of urban core is introduced into the Main Street, because we already have 2 exceptions with the Shores and the Bronte Village Mall. This level of development is not appropriate for the area as established under the Livable Oakville Plan and as far as the livability of the area goes in terms of the heritage, the culture, and public safety. Thank you for hearing my comments here tonight.
Thank you, Ms. Thornberry. I wonder if you would pull the microphone closer or approach it a little closer and just repeat what you said about Main Street 1 and 2 and Urban Core.
The Bronte Village Residents Association supports the community's call for a Main Street 2 designation for the site. But we do want to impress on council and the planning department that we would like to ensure that there is a cap, at least a cap of Main Street 2, to ensure that we do not have any further urban core zoning in the area that is already noted with the exceptions of the Shores and the Bronte Village Mall, as this will depart from the culture and the heritage and the charm of the village and that of the guidelines set in the Livable Oakville Plan and impair the livability of the area and certainly public safety.
Let me just follow up on that. To get a sense of your association's view of the context of the Lakeshore Road part of the community. When the community was discussing welcoming a possible change to Main Street 2, I believe it was everyone's belief that the Bronte Village Mall development was stalled forever. And I'm just wondering if you and your association are re-examining your interest in Main Street 2 as a result of the recent change in ownership of the mall and the possibility that now seems pretty strong that the Bronte Village Mall development permissions will actually get used. Can you give us some guidance on that? If the Bronte Village Mall does develop as per the plan that we put on it 6 years ago, now, after all this time where we thought it wasn't going to go, will you still want Main Street 2 on Lakeshore? That's the question. Does the mall happening, if the mall happens, does it change your view of Main Street 2?
I think that if the mall goes ahead, which we're certain that it will go ahead with the recent change in ownership, it's probably more appropriate to have a designation in the line of Main Street 1, and we support that because that's a majority call from the community. But we would like to ensure that, as we know that this sort of becomes day one of this process after a decision, and it often gets to a point of negotiation, we want to ensure that we've impressed that at that point in time, we do not consider anything outside of Main Street 2 to ensure that we have kept the Main Street of Bronte to a built form that adheres to the Livable Oakville Plan and to what is considered a good spread of intensification within the area.
So thank you for that answer. I'm asking this because I think a little bit turns on this. In the applicant's justification and in the staff report, you see a discussion about what is the impact of the emerging draft directions that staff have been developing for council to consider, but council has not yet, they don't have the force of council behind them. And they mentioned the other emerging issue, which is the mall going to go or not go? I think the report might have been written before the news came that the mall had changed hands. And so it was useful and important, I think, to hear you say that maybe Main Street 1 might be better because that could be the new emerging direction. And one of my concerns about this entire analysis by the applicant and the staff has been the weight given to things that are emerging as opposed to things that are actually enacted by council. So you've helped me quite a lot here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Okay. Are there any other questions for the delegation? Thank you, Shelley.
Could I pose one question in support of our delegation tonight?
You can pose a question.
The issue we have, which we'd like to bring forward as a very crucial issue, is that of public notification and engagement from here on out. The notification and engagement has been prescribed under provincial legislation and has been rolled out as far as this application to this point. From this point onwards, however, it becomes a little bit of a gray area. And we would like to reach out to council and to planning staff and to understand what that communication strategy will be with the community, because this is obviously an issue that is of great concern, and we have a very engaged community that would like to keep abreast of the site application as this goes forward.
We'll have a web page describing the status of the project as it goes forward. At this point, I hate to forecast the future. Rather than forecasting what will happen, we'll just have to wait and see. But whatever happens, we'll post it there for everyone who's interested to go. Plus, you know, you, as a residents association, you're entitled to written notification. And you've requested it and you're getting it.
Yes, we are. But the written notification that we've received has been in line with the provincial legislation, and it becomes a gray area moving forward. So it's very important for us to understand what kind of communication strategy can be deployed. We've had a lot of inquiries from our community prior to tonight's event, trying to establish where we stand, and I know that the inquiries will continue as this application moves forward from tonight, and certainly as far as the applicant's response into what the decision will be here tonight.
Well, we'll have to see what happens tonight. Thanks very much for your information.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Madam Clerk, the next delegation.
The next delegation speaking to this item is Carol Todd Skuse.
Ms. Todd Skuse, welcome.
Thank you very much.
Council looks forward to your information.
Thank you. I have found it very informative so far, Mr. Mayor and councillors. So I would like to state that I am in favor of the recommendation that is given. The only other comment that I would like to make, because I think everything else I had to say has already been stated, is that I would be in favor of a building that was 4 stories maximum, not the 8 stories that seems to be indicated here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for illustrating the rule that you don't diminish what you have to say when you agree with others, and you do everyone a favor when you say so. So that's very good of you. Madam Clerk, the next delegation.
The last registered delegation speaking to this item is Alan Young, the planner for Weston Consulting.
Mr. Young.
Yes,
Welcome back.
thanks, Mr. Mayor, members of council.
Council has received your written communication on their desk here.
Thank you.
Headed A Young Planner.
Yes, that's my
And,
my new reference.
You appear to be still quite young at heart,
Thank you.
so we look forward to your information.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, since we gave a detailed presentation last time, I'm going to speak very briefly, summarizing the letter which I've provided. In our submission to you, we think the proposed development satisfies many important official plan objectives for the revitalization of Bronte. It would achieve intensification by a developer with a track record. It would create sidewalk-oriented shopping facilities, commercial facilities, an urban square, that kind of street presence that I think you're looking for in Bronte. This site is suitable for more intensification than what your official plan calls for, in our opinion. And we think that has been recognized by staff with their draft direction for 10 stories on this site, which is more than what the current official plan allows. We think that recognition stems from the rather unique location of this site at the interface between 2 land use planning areas, and because it is at a gateway. What is really required on this site is some kind of a hybrid designation between those 2 areas, reflecting that interface. And our urban core proposal is our attempt to address that. Based on these fundamental principles, the suitability of the site for intensification, we really don't think an outright refusal is appropriate at this stage, and especially given that comments have only just been released as of April the 4th. I would be pleased to answer any questions there may be.
All right, well, I've got one for you as it happens. When I read your letter, and when I listened to you before, I was wondering, given that I take you to be a professional planner, are you familiar, have you ever heard it said in land use planning that it's important to read the entire policy document? And that we the official plan is not just a little cherry-picked phrase here and
Correct.
a little cherry-picked phrase there?
There's no question you're looking at the whole thing. And if you're, and sometimes you might have to reconcile contradictions. That might come up. But that's the job of the planner, to definitely look at the whole document.
So what's your recollection of what our OP says for this site in terms of height?
It would allow 4 stories up to, and then bonusable up to 6.
And did you just tell us that, I mean, I think I heard you say, just confirm for me here, you said that the staff's draft direction for 10 stories means that we need more intensification here, and so you're going to give us 20?
What I'm saying is that the staff recommendation, or the draft direction I should call them, recognize that this is a suitable site for more intensification than what the current official plan policy allows. We disagree on how much more intensification.
So it seems to me, aren't you picking out of the staff position the fact that they say we need more, and then ignoring the part of the staff position that says it's 10, and substituting 20 for 10?
Well, what I'm trying to do is, so some of the statements in the report suggest that this site should be low-rise, that the Bronte vision is purely low-rise for the Main Street district, yet the official plan says predominantly low-rise. And therefore, it doesn't really identify the circumstances under which you could get more height, except through the gateway provisions and bonusing. But I'm not ignoring, I'm not trying to say that the 10-story draft direction provides support for our 20 stories. I'm saying that staff recognize that a relatively tall building is suitable on this site. We have to agree on how many stories. A decision has to be made on how many.
Well, doesn't that raise a question as to what the role of an official plan is?
Well, the role of the official plan is to provide general direction. In an area like Bronte, a planning exercise was done around 2008, 2009 to set up the current parameters for growth in Bronte. Staff recognized through the review underway that it's time to have a look at those provisions. It's very timely now to look at how that plan is working. And in terms of actual intensification taking place within the Main Street district, none of that growth anticipated. It's not saying that all that growth had to occur overnight, like within 5 years of 2009. But so far, that growth has not been occurring. And that, unfortunately, is typical of many of these kinds of main streets that have fragmented land ownership and where there are existing commercial businesses. It's very hard to bring about redevelopment in those situations. So it's not a surprise. Unfortunately, many plans get done for corridors and intensification. And it's very hit and miss, the take-up of that development potential. Here, there is a developer with a track record who has bought 2 adjoining properties in a site that we think is very suitable for additional building height. So we think this is an opportunity. And it will go some way, make some considerable progress to getting the kind of revitalization that's needed for the Lakeshore Road.
So do I understand you correctly if I understand you to be saying that council should look at its official plan as a departure point or a set of suggestions, a set of guidelines, but it's just a starting point for more? Is that what you need us to do?
It's, you see, well, first of all, the official plan is several years old now, so that we are at a time frame where it is appropriate to reconsider it. But notwithstanding that, even if the official plan were only, say, 2 or 3 years old, The fact is, through a general planning review, you can never look at every site in considerable detail and consider what should happen there. This site, I presume, because it was just a hasty market in the financial business, I presume was not really looked at seriously, or I should say, was not looked at in any particular detail to see what its potential might be as part of that general process. It would be untypical. I'm not aware of any submissions by that landowner. So that's why the Planning Act provides for the opportunity for landowners to make official plan amendment applications, because they recognize that not everything is solved through a general official plan or through a general official plan review. There has to be an opportunity for site-specific scrutiny illuminated by specific proposals for development, which is what you have here.
And the role of the official plan is as a departure point for that elimination?
Well, it provides a benchmark. There are many objectives. There are many that this development fulfills in spades. And yes, the question of building height is probably the most significant here. And you know, we've addressed it, we think, in many ways, because of the distance from the site from the stable residential area, St. Anne's Court. We're within a 45-degree plane. We provide an appropriate separation distance from Lighthouse Tower. The proposed tower falls within the range of building heights of the existing high-rise area. And it's separated from the main street by road allowances. So we think there are a lot of foundations for what we're proposing here. You know, we're happy to, you know, we would expect that what I would consider to be a more typical process would be for us to get comments from staff, and we did get those as of April the 4th. A more typical approach might be, and I think staff themselves contemplated this because the previous report talked about putting this on hold pending further advancement in the Bronte official plan review. At least give us a chance to respond to those comments. We've only just received new shadow guidelines, for example, which address private amenity areas. I would just see that as a more typical approach, but it's obviously in the hands of council.
All right, well, thank you very much for your information. Let's see, we have questions. I'm going to start at one end and go across. Councillor O'Meara.
Thank you. I just have a question with regards to either prior to the pre-consultation or after the pre-consultation to the submission of the application, how your clients went about reflecting on what the cultural heritage was or the historic character of the Bronte Village, or how they went about implementing either through consultation with the community or how they went about implementing those distinct elements into the project.
Well, I think we followed the standard process. We had, you know, the pre-consultation meetings and the community consultation meeting, and now we've had 2 public meetings. I'm not aware of any recommendations for anything beyond that in terms of process, but we followed that. In terms of cultural heritage, there's no question Bronte has a historical background, being an important settlement in the 19th century, but there are no heritage buildings in the vicinity of this site. Of all the places within Bronte Village to increase building height, surely this is it, because it's next to the 17-story lighthouse. There's even the 13 or 15-story Sir Richard Towers on the west side of East Street even, you know, closer to the waterfront. So I don't think a tall building would be of any surprise on this site.
Yeah,
that has already been established in this community.
Yeah, and sorry, I wasn't talking about the height. I think Mr. Mayor addressed that. It was about, I mean, you don't have to go very far to listen to some of the comments about the unique character of Bronte, and obviously it's in our livable plan here, and I'm just wondering how that was incorporated, or if before the submission. Again, everybody does their statutory meetings, but so you don't know of any consultation that the applicants did with any of the community or historical society or anything like that to have a design that matched the character of the village?
Well, You know, we're certainly open to suggestions for how we treat the ground floor level, and there may be landscaping treatments that are appropriate, particularly for the village or what have you, but we don't have any design guidance direction of that nature at the present time. But we would be happy to engage in those kinds of discussions. What's informed the main design of the tower and so on is obviously a very contemporary theme, and it's trying to be strikingly innovative. There aren't historic buildings in the vicinity. What's in the vicinity are very standard post-war forms of development. Not the kind of thing you really want to emulate. So we're trying to come up with something very smart and striking on this corner. And we think that's encouraged by your policies.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you very much for your delegation. I wonder if you could please remind me what the understanding of your applicant was in terms of the zoning on the property. What was the height restriction at the time of purchase?
I believe it's, well, it's approximately 4 stories, I think, probably.
Thank you.
Okay. There's no question the applicant knew the rezoning was required to get the greater building height, and that would have to be justified.
Just in sense of fairness, they knew what they purchased, is what I'm asking. Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you very much for your presentation. So I guess I want to ask, you're here tonight, and you mentioned earlier about you're open. Are you now open to 10 stories after reading the staff report and listening to the residents tonight speak?
No, sir, I can't say that we're open to a reduction to any particular building height,
Okay,
such as
thank
10
you.
stories, no.
Thanks.
All right, Councillor Lischina.
Mr. Young, there's a big board there showing the new building, and I believe there was a website. Were you actually already selling to residents, or your?
At the present time?
Yes.
May I just ask my client that question? Okay, they have an application in for building permit for a sales center within the Hasty Market building on the corner, and no sales activity has occurred yet, I'm advised.
You've already received the permit?
No,
Not yet.
We expect it was filed at the beginning of April, and we think it will be issuable in the near future.
And that permit is based on the 20 stories?
Well, the permit is only to set up the sales office.
Oh, I see.
So it doesn't govern anything to do with the project.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Young, for attending tonight.
Thanks, Mr.
Providing
Mayor.
us with your information.
Thank you.
Well, Council, I believe I'll now confine it to table, and I have a bunch of hands over here and nothing over there, so I'm looking over here. Councillor O'Meara.
I'm when the time comes, I'm happy to put forward a motion, so I'm not sure if that's.
Well, as you know, I quite favor putting a matter on the floor so that we can debate it. So I'll accept your motion. And you're moving the staff recommendation, are you?
I am indeed, Your Worship. I am indeed, yes.
Thank you. Councillor Dudek, did you want to speak?
I guess I had a question of staff first. Given the last delegation that we just had, I was quite concerned that there was a reference to us not going through an extensive, thorough public consultative process in our existing official plan. And yes, we are going through looking at it yet again to tweak some of the things, but I don't want to let people think there's any misinterpretation that we didn't look very, very, very carefully at each and every piece of property in our community before we went through our official plan process. Is that correct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, that is correct. On the website, I think it still is on the website, there was a Bronte area review that was done. It was done site by site. and looked at all the details of that area in order to establish a boundary, the appropriate height and density and designations on each one of those properties. So that was the foundation for the growth area policies that are currently in Livable Oakville. So it was not a general review, it was a very specific site-by-site review.
Thank you very much. For that reason, I will be supporting Councillor O'Meara and Councillor Robinson in regards to the staff recommendation for denial.
Thank you, Councillor Dudek. Any other speakers? Recorded vote. Well, thank you very much. As everyone knows, we have a recorded vote on request.
Your Worship, may I make a comment on the motion?
Of course you can.
Now?
Yes.
Thank you. It'll be brief. Rather historical. Many years ago, I publicly stated Bronte is on fire. People remember those remarks.
Could you just pull your microphone closer to your mouth, please?
I said that many years ago, I publicly stated Bronte is on fire. And that condition continues to exist. In my many years, I don't believe we have experienced such an outcry of opposition to a development project by so many Bronte residents. Years ago, we fought growth and economic development, but things have changed. And we do need more density and growth as we recognize the financial importance and the impact of growth. But what we don't need is a downtown Toronto type of plan and growth of 20 stories as we devour our very special and historical lifestyle in the community. Those are my historical comments, Your Worship, and thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Councillor Robinson, for your historical comments. We always value your historical perspective. You are the longest-serving member of this council. I guess that makes you the granddaddy of us all, eh? Bronte is indeed rich in representation. I think Bronte has the oldest and the youngest representative. Council, are there any other speakers on the motion as duly moved by Councillor O'Meara? Councillor O'Meara.
Sorry, I did just want to speak to the motion briefly because I think one thing that I would like to stress, though the numbers vary, we didn't hear from too many people who said we don't want a revitalization of our core. I think the message was loud and clear that as a community and something we've prided ourselves on in Oakville, we do it collectively, we do it collaboratively, and for a building that will outlive all of us in this room, including myself, I think it's important we get it right, and it's important that the community have buy-in in terms of this process, because long after the condos have been sold, the community will still be left with that, and that was the message that I heard loud and clear from the community. So I want to thank staff for their incredible report on this and extensive work on it, and I want to thank the over 200 people who we heard from over this issue over the past 6 months or 8 months or even a year on it. So it does speak to the community that we have in Bronte. So with that, again, I'm happy to move the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. As mayor, I'd like to compliment the staff report. I was struck as I read it on the weekend at what a good job it was. It struck me that it was so measured and reasoned out, dealing with each of the issues in turn and answering them. And I was just very proud of the process that we've gone through as a council here to create our Livable Oakville plan and to see the kind of decision that it generates here. It's a carefully measured and responsible report, in my opinion, and I'll have no trouble supporting it. A recorded vote has been called for, and so to show your support for the motion, please rise to be named. Councillor Lischina, Councillor Adams, Councillor Grant, Councillor Knoll, Councillor Lapworth, Councillor Elgar, Mayor Burton, Councillor Hutchins, Councillor Giddings, Councillor Chisholm, Councillor Dudek, Councillor Robinson, and Councillor O'Meara. I declare the motion carried. and the application is denied. But we don't do that. We don't do that. You can do that outside, though. But we have rules of decorum in order to try to make sure that everybody feels fairly treated on matters when we debate them. I know you understand that, and I thank you for your cooperation with that. And to assist members of the, by a show of hands, any member of the public looking for a non-awkward moment to leave? We'll have a short little break for leaving right now. All right, let's resume, shall we? Let me call the meeting back to order. And the next item, if you'll give your attention to Susan Shepard, our Heritage Planner, we have quite a delightful report on the Heritage Grant Program's success and a recommendation that the funding allotment be approved and that the staff report to the Budget Committee on the options and implications of an ongoing Heritage Grant Program. And Ms. Shepard, we're all ears.
Thank you, Your Worship and members of Council. So I'm here with a good news report for you to report on two items relating to the town's financial incentives for designated heritage properties. The first portion of the report deals with the recommended allotments for the 2016 year of the pilot Heritage Grant Program, which was a 3-year program approved by Council in 2013. Just to refresh you, there is $80,000 available in funding each year, or there has been over the past 3 years. For the 2016 grant period, 23 applications were received requesting over $138,000 in funding. The types of projects that we received applications for includes restoration projects for historic windows, stained glass, new wood screen and storm windows, repairs to historic porches, structural repairs to foundations and masonry work, painting of historic woodwork, and even the maintenance of a heritage tree. So these are just several of the properties that have applied for grants this year. As we do each year, a working group is struck between that consists of members of the Heritage Oakville Advisory Committee and the 2 heritage planners on staff. The working group then goes through all of the applications to identify high priority projects, medium priority, and then lower projects, and try to spread out the money as fairly as possible, with the higher priority projects receiving a higher percentage of their funding request. For those properties that received a reduced amount of funding for, recommendation, we also scale back the work so that the work is more appropriately scoped to the grant that we have available for that property. All 23 of the applications this year are recommended to receive at least some level of funding. The second part of the report is a review of the pilot program, as this is the 3rd and final year, and we did make a commitment to come back to Council with some of the lessons learned. The program intake for each year has exceeded our expectations. The first year of the program especially, we weren't sure how many applications to receive, and we did encourage many property owners to apply and received a record number of applications that year. In terms of measuring the impact of the program via heritage designation requests by property owners, while we did send out a letter to our listed heritage properties that are not designated, we received quite a bit of feedback and interested calls to the heritage planning staff members. But given that the Heritage Grant Program was currently a pilot program, the general consensus from those people was, we'll wait and see what happens. Overall feedback on the program has been very positive. Most property owners are exceedingly happy to receive recognition that they pay a premium to get appropriate work done for their heritage conservation and restoration projects. The one thing we hear every year, though, is we wish there was more funding available. The project quality as we've seen through Heritage Planning staff completing the inspections on each one of these approved grant projects has been outstanding, especially in terms of restoring our original and historic heritage windows. In terms of property standards orders, I'd say there's a relatively limited impact simply because most of the property standards orders that we've seen over the past 5 to 7 years have been on listed properties, not on designated properties. But the impact overall on neighboring properties and on our heritage conservation districts has been very positive. In fact, you'll see a number of streets that have multiple neighbors submitting heritage grant applications because the word has spread. Over the 3-year grant pilot program, providing, of course, that the recommendations tonight for the 2016 program are endorsed by Council, we will have funded 68 restoration projects with a total project value of over $1 million. This is based on a total contribution from the town of only $240,000. When the pilot program review was presented to the Heritage Oakville Advisory Committee in their meeting of April, the committee strongly endorsed the continuation and enhancement of the Heritage Grant Program. This is just a small chart showing you the amount of funding that we have available, which is that small little bar, the grant requests that we have each year, and then the total project value of the work that's proposed by those projects. So I think you can see we're getting a lot of bang for our buck. Ooh. That was unexpected. Some of the past projects that have already received their grants from previous years include this property at 226 William Street that restored their original front porch to the house. The property at the corner of Lakeshore Road and Navy Street that's invested a significant amount in repairing both the masonry and the historic trim on their building and removing the purple awnings. This house that's restored their historic front porch, removing the concrete stairs and decaying metal railings to provide them with more appropriate wooden stairs and wooden railings. And then this photo, which is slightly difficult to see. It's not the prettiest thing, but the photograph on the left does show a very deteriorating stucco wall, and then the stucco wall that's being repaired afterwards. Funding for the pilot program has been in part through the town's operating budget and in part through the Heritage Reserve Fund, which is a fund that was created to hold a number of one-time developer contributions. Those developer contributions are generally the worst-case scenarios. They tend to happen when there's an unfortunate loss to Oakville's cultural heritage value, such as loss of a building through fire. So continuation of the program will require commitment from the Town Budget Committee because the Heritage Reserve Fund is not a stable source of funding in the future. Therefore, the recommendation is, again, 2 parts. 1, to approve the recommendations for the 2016 program, and then to give staff direction to report to the Budget Committee on the options and implications for an ongoing Heritage Grant Program. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you very much, Ms. Shepard. I compliment you on your report and the success of the program. And as with all budgetary committee referrals, there's no guarantees, but Council is surpassingly proud of the work of the Heritage Department. Councillor Dudek?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm so glad you raised those remarks because I did want to go on notice that I will be a little bit of a dog with a bone when it comes to budget in regards to this particular program. We've had extremely positive engagement at the Oakville Heritage Committee with this Heritage Grant Program, and it's unfortunate that we cannot fund them to the capacity we would like to. But that being said, recently at the region, there was a heritage or tax reduction program that the region introduced that I know Burlington and Halton Hills have entered into. If we were to revise the staff recommendation to incorporate that staff report to the Budget Committee on the options and implications of an ongoing heritage grant program and possible additional incentives, would that capture it enough so that we could bring it back and have a comprehensive look at what's available?
Through you, Your Worship, certainly I think the addition of other financial incentives would certainly be appropriate.
Councillor Giddings.
Thank you so much. Great to see the involvement. Councillor Nick and I have certainly talked to an awful lot of residents in the area that are proud of their properties and proud to be able to get some sort of help in doing the work. Would your, prior to going to budget, would your preference be increased money or increased percentage of work so people can get a larger percentage of the work they're having performed? Or were there any thoughts about that at committee?
Through you, Your Worship, there wasn't a discussion of an increased percentage. I think the thought of having it, or continuing the matching 50-50, which is what we currently do, is fair because all property owners have to do maintenance on their property. The Heritage Grant Program and other heritage incentives are designed to cover the premium that property owners pay. The committee did toss around potential increases from the $80,000 in funding, and I guess I'd refer to the councillors to make sure that I'm correct. I believe it was $100,000 to $120,000 was what the Heritage Committee discussed.
All right, that was my other question. You weren't looking for similar funds, all being equal. You'd like to come looking for additional funds.
Through you, Your Worship, I think the demand for the program indicates that there's certainly an argument to be made for increased funding.
And I agree. Thank you.
Yes, I want to commend you also, Sue, on this program. In fact, the whole of staff. There's been tremendous buy-in by everywhere, not just downtown Oakville, but Palermo and so on. I will certainly be voting for this and for encouraging my colleagues to increase the amount of funding available to $120,000 if possible. It's one of these situations where with a little bit more money you get a lot more bang for your buck, and people are proud of their properties and are proud of heritage, and they do have to pay an excess fee to keep their properties up to heritage standards. So I think it's only fair that we look at this. But so yes, I thank you for all your work and effort.
Thank you, Councillor Hutchins. Councillor Knoll.
Thank you, Worship. I'm very pleased to see Palermo United Church as one of the recommended applicants. My question relates to, though, the obvious lack of North Oakville recommended or applications here. Is that simply from a lack of applications, a lack of non-burned down properties, or what? Can you maybe expand on how did we promote this in North Oakville? Did you have applications that were not satisfactory? How does this apply to our northern heritage areas?
Thank you, Councillor Knoll. Through you, Your Worship. All of the applications that were received this year were considered complete applications and were given some level of funding. And so we didn't have anybody in North Oakville or otherwise that we've turned down. I was especially pleased to work with Palermo United Church in their, this is actually the second heritage grant that they've applied for and that we're recommending approval for, a significant increase from their last heritage grant amount because the work they're proposing is certainly increased exponentially as well. In terms of notification, we do send notice to all of our property owners across the town. We have usually a banner on the town's webpage, and the Heritage Planning webpage has a section on the Heritage Grant Program as well. We can certainly look at improved opportunities for communication if the program moves forward. Reaching out more directly to some of the developers, for example, and some of the smaller property owners.
I think it'd be excellent, particularly with respect to some of the developers who are incorporating heritage homes in their subdivisions, not that they really wanted to, but they're doing it, looking at them plus some of the existing heritage properties, perhaps if we can be a little more proactive in terms of attracting someone, because I'm not sure if they necessarily feel part of the club. Having spoken to many of them over the years, it'd be great if we could reach out. So thank you for Palermo. I think that's very exciting. I'm really happy to see that. And perhaps we could have a subset fund, Your Worship, for fire suppression grants for North Oakville Heritage Properties, because that might help a lot as well. Thank you, Worship.
All right, Mr. Budget Chief, you're next. Councillor Adams.
So as not to disappoint, I'll ask a budget question. So on page 127, you have the graph that you showed on one of your slides. Maybe you could just back up to that. I wondered, do you have any statistics, any figures for pre-2014 or projects in effect that would have gone ahead with or without a grant?
Through you, Your Worship, unfortunately, I don't have that information. When we take heritage permits forward, we aren't ever really copied on the dollar amount, the value of those projects, and I think that would be the only way that we would receive that type of data. There have been big projects in the past, and I expect there will be big projects again in the future.
Are all of these projects ones that need some kind of permit from the town?
Through you, Your Worship, no. Some of the work is considered to be restoration that's more of a maintenance issue. So, for example, when we fund projects that are the painting of exterior woodwork and trim, we don't require a heritage permit for those mostly, unless they're changing the color, because it is considered maintenance. But it's a maintenance that's of a higher quality of work than a normal property owner would have to pay for, because quite honestly, they'd replace their wood siding with vinyl trim or aluminum siding. We require that designated property owners maintain their wood siding and their wood trim, and therefore it is one of the projects that is considered eligible for funding.
Okay, so you're saying that you don't have any direct numbers that you can use. Could we get a report on some kind of estimation of what would have happened without it, in effect? I think we should get some. We should be able to get some kind of review or estimation of the value of work that happens with or without a grant program.
I think, Mr. Budget Chair, you're in the best position to look after that with your committee.
Well, except our staff are the ones that would have to be able to provide us some kind of chart like this one that would provide us some estimate of the total value of work that occurs to heritage buildings. And maybe that may mean looking at building permits issued to heritage designated buildings, or some other proxy for this kind of work.
Well, are you asking for a report?
Yes, I am.
Would you like to write that out?
Sure.
Thank you. Councillor Grant and, Councillor Lishchyna, and then Councillor Grant, and then Councillor Dudek.
I think my question was answered, but just in case, if you can clarify, so property owners don't have to get approval every time they're doing any restoration work, or a certain dollar amount that they come to the town to get approval? Is that?
Through you.
I'm not clear about the restoration work if somebody wants to do something to their heritage property.
Through you, Your Worship, there are really three kind of categories of work. One we consider to be maintenance. Those are the types of projects that involve very minor in nature things, such as repainting, things like that, that don't require heritage permit approval. We have a second category, which are minor heritage permits. Those are delegated to staff for approval, and those are for changes that may not necessarily directly involve the alteration of a historic feature of a building, but say, for example, an applicant wanted to remove their asphalt shingle roof and put on a cedar shingle roof. They're not removing a heritage feature. They're actually, in fact, improving the overall character of the building, but we do require a heritage permit to document that sort of change and to make sure that they're using the appropriate types of materials. And then the third category of change is a full heritage permit, which goes through the Heritage Oakville Advisory Committee into Council for final approval. And those include direct changes to the heritage attributes of a property or additions. And so one of the first pictures I showed, 226 William Street. Whoops. So they decided to apply for their heritage grant to restore a front porch that they had historic documentation of, but it was considered a significant change to the building, so they did go through the full heritage permit application process and received an endorsement from the Heritage Oakville Advisory Committee and then a final approval from council for a project such as this.
So we have a property standards bylaw. The heritage homes have their own. Is there a significant difference in what they have to do to upkeep the homes? I mean, being a rundown heritage home is going to be much worse than one that's not a heritage home. So I guess my question is, are the property owners expected to do a lot more? I realize there's a premium, but are they expected to be upkeeping their homes to a higher standard than the rest of us?
Through you, Your Worship. So the property standards bylaw does actually have a specific section in it for designated heritage properties, but that does refer to the more kind of basic minimum standards of home maintenance. In general terms, the Heritage District plans and Council's adoption of the standards and guidelines for the conservation of historic places in Canada sets out a fairly stringent requirement for property owners to maintain their home in an acceptable state. And so we've got our Heritage District plans, which certainly emphasize the importance of keeping your home in good condition because really preventative maintenance and restoration projects will decrease your costs in the long run to keep your wood from deteriorating and so on. So it's a difficult question to answer.
So would you say that the grant program is an incentive to get these done sooner than later?
Definitely.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Grant?
Thank you. I'm wondering how we would respond to the optics of this, that we are essentially subsidizing people who have expensive properties and are wealthy properties, and essentially subsidizing the fact that they are increasing their property value.
The Heritage Grant Program, like I said, is designed to help with the premium that these owners are forced to pay because the town retains some level of control over making sure that they don't, switch out their original wood windows for aluminum windows. Something even that, the large and lovely properties on Chartwell Road may consider because they are not a designated heritage home. It goes towards recognizing the importance that Oakville places on retaining our original cultural value and materials.
Okay, but given that historically we've talked about, in this council chamber at least, how if we have the bylaws, if we have the zoning, people need to pay attention to these bylaws, then essentially now we are giving people money just to make sure that they stay up with the bylaws and pay attention to what we want them to do?
I'd say that the Heritage Grant Program certainly encourages restoration more than what's the basic standards that are required. Through heritage designation, the town really recognizes that our heritage districts and our individual heritage properties are different from other properties in Oakville, and it does place some restrictions on them that some property owners may argue impacts their property value, and assistance with the premium that they are forced to pay because the town has recognized that their property has cultural heritage value is one of the ways of making heritage designation a more positive aspect for property owners.
But we don't have a fund for people who may be at the poverty level who can't maintain their property as it is. be outside of your purview, and I apologize for that question. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Grant. Councillor Duddeck?
Thank you. Just in response to my colleague's question that's just been raised, there were quite a few people on this grant program who are maybe not on poverty, but pretty close to it, who take exceptional pride in their property and cannot afford to put in the type of windows, the type of trims we expect them to do on a heritage. And therefore, similar to what Susan was just referring, they're basically, what shall I say, preserving our heritage for generations to come. It is such a small, small piece for us to do in recognition, basically. It's nowhere near. I mean, we had several projects were several $100,000, and the most we could give them was $15,000 under the program. It's almost postage when you look at it. And I guess that's my other concern with the possible motion coming from Councillor Adams. I think we need to capture, more importantly, what is the dollar figure of the applications that were submitted and what we provided them, because like I say, there were several of the applications that I was embarrassed that they were doing exceptional work, and this was not cosmetic by any stretch of the imagination. Repointing brick and doing structural supports is very, very labor and cost prohibitive. And so as I say, if we can give some sort of rationale between what we gave them versus how much the scope of the project was and the dollar figure that they're investing in our history, I think that goes more importantly.
Thank you, Councillor Duddeck. Councillor Adams.
I'm not sure, do you actually have a motion on the floor yet or not? She does, apparently. So, okay, oh, you do, okay, so it's been moved? Okay, so what I'd like to do is add an amendment to it, and that would be that staff report to the Budget Committee on the value and/or amount of work on heritage properties before and after the introduction of the Heritage Grant Program, and the amount of work that would have been undertaken without a grant. And the intent is simply to get some additional information about the kinds and amount of work that are being undertaken, including the those projects that I'll say are very substantial projects. And I don't mean to say that they're not structural or the kinds of projects that if you don't do them, the place is going to fall down. That's exactly the kind of thing that I think is important. I'm just trying to get a sense of, are these major projects that are going to, they're going to happen no matter what we do because they're so important, or are they not going to happen and over time they'll degrade the value of the properties?
And Councillor Duddeck.
Thank you, Worship. Through you. I guess the concern I have with capturing prior to the grant program is we didn't really have an opportunity to secure that other than through building permits or a heritage permit for works to be completed. So quite honestly, a lot of people have been saying for quite some time at our committee, you know, I'm not doing anything till if and when somebody sort of offsets a bit of the cost. And as they said, they're not expecting a huge payout, just some small recognition for the investment they're making, not only on their own home, but on the community and our heritage. And I really don't think, in fairness, you're going to be able, I don't want them going chasing something that they may not be able to get because we didn't, other than a permit coming in, know what the response was going to be, and hence why it was a pilot project.
All right. There's an amendment on the floor to add a request for a report to accompany this referral to the Budget Committee. All those in favor of the amendment? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. The amendment carries. Would you like to register your opposition, those who are voting against?
I just think it's an unrealistic request, but that's just me. Anyway.
I'm taking comfort from the standing bylaw we have that permits staff to report to council. Your request was impossible. So there'll be something or there won't be something. I'll now call the vote on the main motion. All those in favor? Opposed, if any, and that carries more completely. Thank you, everybody. Now, I'm delighted to call Allison Newton up, and I've been looking forward to this for some time, and this is staff's report on the Economic Development Strategy progress.
Thank you, Your Worship, members of council. On March 21st of this year, you received the 2015 annual report, which highlighted the many notable outcomes and investments from the past year. I won't go over those again for you, but tonight I will review our progress since the approval of the strategy in 2009, as well as factors which have influenced our work plans moving forward and in recent years. The Economic Development Strategy was always anticipated to be a fluid document that would adapt to changes in the local environment and the economy. As a result, our tactics have evolved over time. Since approval of the strategy, over 2 million square feet of office development has entered the market, and there is currently an additional 650,000 square feet under construction. A number of key corporate tenants have moved into much of this space, including Siemens Canada, Manulife Securities, PricewaterhouseCoopers, Innomar Strategies Amerisource Bergen, Canadian Tire Financial Services, and Westcon Comstor Canada. And I should note that all of these have been just since 2010. These continued investments bring a significant number of new jobs to Oakville and add to our growing professional services cluster. So what are some of the factors that have changed in recent years? Move this forward. Thanks. Our corporate calling program has been the mainstay of our retention program as it relates to advanced manufacturing. This alerts us to expansion opportunities and allows us to address issues as they arise. More recently is the development of an Ontario Auto Mayors Group. We've been coordinating the initiatives of mayors across the province with a view to sustaining the automotive footprint across Canada. These initiatives include meetings and summits which bring together industry, academia, government. Information and research is shared, and the policy direction is identified in order to remain competitive in the global market. Oakville has seen and benefited from a number of regional office consolidations. While companies are going through these consolidations, they are increasingly taking note of the shifting demographics in the workforce and the subsequent demand for more efficient and flexible workspaces. A recent boom in office development has caused the vacancy rate in Oakville to rise above 21%, demonstrating strength in the local market and confidence in the area, while also providing an opportunity for Oakville to attract new investment to these modern and adaptable facilities. The professional services sector has emerged as Oakville's premier opportunity for growth and will be the focus of marketing and outreach initiatives as we move forward. There is an emerging trend globally in innovation districts. These are defined as geographic areas that combine public, private, and educational space and focus on cluster development. These districts speak to the demands of a new workforce generation and promote a compact, sustainable urban environment. Traditionally, employment districts developed as isolated industrial office parks accessible only by car, with little thought given to incorporating quality of life with work. Innovation districts change the way we look at the future of our employment areas. With the submission of a major development application in 2015 for a life sciences and technology district beside the new hospital, these principles are being examined through the ongoing development approval process. With respect to digital media and animation, some new organizations have filled a gap in the provision of services for this sector. Two notables are Haltech and Silicon Halton, which provide resources for startup and growing technology companies, as well as events to connect companies locally and provide learning opportunities.
Sheridan College remains as the anchor institution for digital media, and staff continues to partner with Sheridan and these new organizations to foster growth of this sector. Work within Oakville's business improvement areas and the retail sector in general was not originally contemplated in the development of the economic development strategy. Because the BIAs have their own board of directors guiding their initiatives and Halton Region Economic Development provides small business assistance, our focus has always been on medium and large businesses. However, as the Main Street area struggles in recent years to attract more traffic, staff has provided assistance to the BIAs, including the hiring of a retail expert for consultation, research and development of retail action plans to help rejuvenate these areas. International investment attraction is really one area that we haven't reviewed with council yet. In 2015, staff worked with a consultant to complete an international business development plan as identified in our strategy, which is attached to the staff report as Appendix B. To date, our department has been largely reactive in the area of foreign direct investment. Our primary source of leads has come to us directly from companies and our network of real estate contacts. The current ecosystem for foreign direct investment in Oakville is highly complex. While operating within a two-tiered municipal system, Oakville also falls within the jurisdiction of Toronto Global, which is formerly the Greater Toronto Marketing Alliance, and there are also provincial and federal representatives operating globally in this area. The newly formed Toronto Global has secured significant provincial funding contributions to expand its programming and service delivery. Given this large investment, staff will leverage the strengths of this large organization and monitor its progress and results over the next 18 months. Recommendations in the International Business Plan suggest that staff work closely with Toronto Global over the next year to keep them informed about Oakville. Staff will examine where opportunities with Toronto Global international activities align with Oakville's niche areas as identified in our plan. Another recommendation in the International Business Plan is to increase Oakville's online presence in order to better reach an international audience. Throughout 2016, staff will be developing a microsite called Invest Oakville with specific content recommendations from the International Business Plan. We were successful in securing a federal grant to offset the cost of this work. The one area in which a wait-and-see approach will not be taken at this time is China. In 2015, Oakville signed a sister city agreement with the city of Huai'an in Jiangsu province. In order to foster this relationship and explore business opportunities, direct involvement will continue. Staff will also determine if there are any initiatives being undertaken in China by Toronto Global that could be aligned with Oakville. Overall, staff believes that the goals and objectives of the strategy are still valid and applicable. In the context of a progressively competitive and dynamic market, there will be an increased emphasis on attraction initiatives in the professional services sector for the foreseeable future. We will also continue work on retention and expansion initiatives with our local companies. Staff intends to begin work on a comprehensive update to the strategy in 2017. Thank you for your time, and I welcome any questions.
Thank you, Allison, for the report. And you have a question or two. Councillor Elgar.
I'd like to thank you very much for the report. I just have a question regarding the health-oriented mixed-use node. And can you give me a little more feedback on that? I read the town and regional staff have been working closely to nurture this opportunity. Okay, so where are we going and what's the timeline?
Well, we do have a complete application in for that area, and it is going through the planning process at this time. And I believe a recommendation report will be coming to council shortly.
Is shortly 2016?
Yes, it is.
I look forward to seeing that report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Elgar. Councillor Chinna? I didn't see his hand. Do you want to be recognized? You have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you, Allison. You mentioned in your presentation about the 21% vacancy rate. In the report, it's indicating the result of older office product being vacated in favor I'm assuming it means newer office development. It just said older again. Where are the older office developments that are most vacated? Is there a particular ward that that's having the most of this? And I realize it says that there's some targeted investment attraction initiatives. Can you give us an example of one or two?
Sure. Through you, Your Worship. We are working on targeted marketing campaign. Clearly, our niche sector has been the professional financial services. That's where we are seeing the bulk of growth. The 21% vacancy rate it is certainly not something we want to ignore, but it's not a bad news story for Oakville either. It's certainly something that's being seen across the GTA. The good news for Oakville is it's not a result of companies leaving Oakville. It's a result of new product, which is showing confidence in the market. So it's just a matter of the market cycle that we're in. So we're seeing new growth come in, newer product being built, and that's certainly a demand of the product of the companies that we've been working with. I wouldn't say that there's a particular ward that's being affected. There's certainly older office product along the QEW corridor, and I wouldn't say that that's not in high demand. There's always going to be demand for that, but many of the companies that are consolidating, which is a trend that we're seeing in the GTA, are favoring the newer builds and the more modern office space. Some of the initiatives, that we are going through are outlined in the International Business Plan. They're not going to be unique to foreign companies, but we will be looking at increasing our online presence and leveraging the networks that we have at the provincial and regional levels to a greater extent moving forward.
Thank you, Councillor. As you will know from moving around your ward, you've enjoyed a lot of investment in office space, and it's slowly being taken up. And one of the big investors in a spec building in your ward down on North Service Road has begun to move forward with an expansion. So, and they aren't even full yet. So somebody's believing in your ward there. Over here, was there an unseen hand? Councillor O'Meara.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Two questions. A lot of the strategy study by JWP Strategy and McSweeney on international foreign, on FDI, places a lot of importance on NewCo and Toronto Global, and the discussions that we've had at a regional level, that might be dead before it even gets out of the barn. So I'm wondering what our, I won't say backup plan, but we might need to accelerate those plans prior to waiting until the end of this strategic plan. So I guess A, what's our backup? And B, again, the report talked a lot about continuity in these things, and it said because we as a municipality can't do that, we should be relying on the province and the feds. But do we maybe start, as the mayor likes to do, shipping the mayor off to China a little bit more to get that continuity? I mean, is that something we look at then if we're going to be pulling back from that animal downtown? I mean, what's our strategy there?
Excuse me, through you, Your Worship. I believe the avenue that they took in regards to Toronto Global was in light of the significant funding that they received from the province. So they felt it was premature to make recommendations that Oakville go on its own. I think the sort of wait-and-see approach was, again, in light of this funding, to leverage any opportunities that may come over the next 12 to 18 months and then reassess at that period the success and or failure of that entity as we move forward. But it was premature to judge what their success may be. I believe that going into FDI is going to take significant resources if we were to take a more proactive approach as a town and certainly as a department. So recommendations will be coming forward at the end of that assessment period, if you'd like to say, on how we should proceed in light of the results that we see from Toronto Global. And again, as I mentioned, I believe China is the one area that we will not be holding back on per se in the interim, because we do want to maintain the momentum that's been built by those sister city arrangements and the work that Mayor Burton has already done in China.
Well, thank you for that, and I think it's important, you know, once you've got your foot in the door, that it continues, and it would be a waste if it didn't. And my second is general point. I'm just curious, again, I know we have representation from the Oakville Chamber of Commerce here, but I'm wondering where their role is in this update, or where we're going forward. I mean, we've got a pretty strong asset in our local chamber, and I'm just wondering, I didn't even see their name mentioned once, except for an event we sort of co-hosted with them. So I'm just wondering what role we foresee them in terms of assisting us with our economic objectives.
We certainly partner with the Chamber to the absolute extent possible on advocacy and policy issues and support in our respective events. Historically, we have not had extensive convergence between the companies that we have worked with, so we tend to work again with the medium and large sized businesses and on investment attraction, and the initiatives undertaken by the Chamber are much more in fostering the existing business community and business retention and expansion. So we tend to, with the limited resources that everybody has, try not to overlap our activities and try to complement each other to the extent possible.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Giddings, did I see your hand?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, a couple of questions. There's mention of further enhancements to Find Oakville through the addition of data layers. What would those layers look like? I'm just wondering what kind of information would you have up there?
Sure. Through you, Your Worship, we do have access to multiple layers that are already created through our strategic business support unit. So for example, you can add on zoning layers that already exist, active development applications which already exist. So those are things that are optional layers to add on. The other thing that we've been looking at is the addition of Environics data, which we do have access to, which would give a better snapshot to potential investors of what their respective areas would look like as far as educational attainment and the demographics in the area that they may be interested in.
Thank you. Do you have any sense, or do we have any way of finding out how many people are on that, clicking, what they're looking for, how often they're looking at? Can we quantify the number of people that are checking us out?
Through you, Your Worship, we absolutely do. We have an analytics tool in place for that. I don't have the numbers in front of me, unfortunately, but I can certainly get them to you.
At some point, I would appreciate that. My other question was, we talk about, when established in 2009, the strategy set out the following desired outcomes. A number of them that have been detailed in your report. One that I didn't see was a marked improvement in the level of satisfaction from the business community. In the attached report on page, the strategy foreign direct investment, on page 35, section 6.3, it talks about service level commitment, and it has some metrics there in terms of getting back at a certain amount of time, following up after a meeting, whatever those items could be. I'm just curious, I'd also be interested in seeing the metrics or the results of, or how we've moved the bar in terms of the business community.
Okay. We do have a leaders reception that's actually hosted by the Chamber of Commerce every year, where we get feedback. Much of that is on a sort of qualitative basis, but we can certainly provide you with some of the comments and feedback that we've received.
All right. Obviously, I'd like to see, was the intent to make use of some of these in our metrics going forward?
Absolutely.
And that will come back through us, or a further update later on?
It will. It will come through the comprehensive update that we will begin next year.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Lischina.
Allison, my question is regarding the objective where it says explore opportunities to develop Oakville as an international hub for digital media and animation. And so there's, we obviously have a significant partnership with Sheridan in this area, having a campus in Oakville. Now Sheridan is also has campuses in Mississauga and Brampton, and as we know, we have a new chancellor who's Mississauga-based. What are the threats down the road potentially of them setting up a huge hub in other areas outside of Oakville? Have we had any discussions with Sheridan specifically in this, obviously for the next 4 or 5 years as part of this plan?
Through you, Your Worship, that goal in the strategy was set out in 2009. We've certainly gained an enormous amount of intelligence on the sector, and we've done extensive work with Sheridan in the time since the implementation of the strategy. And the Brampton campus and the Mississauga campus, Brampton certainly not so much because it's focused more on the trades. But we see the strength remaining in Oakville. We don't see the threat for that particular sector being diminished by another campus in Mississauga. It doesn't mean that we can not nurture that opportunity, but we certainly don't see that as a threat. There are other threats to the sector, and some of that is discussed in the strategy. But we certainly think that we can still leverage the strengths of Sheridan as their primary campus here in Oakville.
I'm glad to see that.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other questions? Councillor Hutchins.
Yes, thank you, Alison. I have a question on you're talking about Toronto Global getting significant funding to go out and promote Toronto, and we're trying to leverage Oakville on the shirt tails of Toronto. I mean, how are they? Do they like us doing this thing? Are we going to participate in trade shows? I mean, exactly how are we going to accomplish that? I mean, other than say, yeah, Oakville, we're here, we're 200,000 on the 2.4 or 3 million that is Toronto. I mean, how is that going to be done?
Through you, Your Worship, I can first off say that we have not seen any operating plan or strategy from Toronto Global, and historically that has always been the issue that we had with the Greater Toronto Marketing Alliance. The mandate for Toronto Global is certainly to provide leads for all the GTA municipalities. There is funding being provided through Halton Region, and as such we are members of Toronto Global, so their mandate is certainly to provide leads to Oakville. Whether we will actually see results out of that remains to be seen. So we will be monitoring that very closely as far as number of leads and quantifying the information we get from them. The best we can do at this point as a municipality is to provide them as much information as possible and certainly keep the communication open with them.
You don't know if they're going to be going out to trade shows and putting Toronto on the map in Germany or France or
They will
Timbuktu
certainly be participating in trade missions, the same as GTMA did. My understanding is that there aren't going to be municipalities joining them to the extent that they did once with GTMA, such as Mississauga and Brampton. I know went on many trade missions with GTMA or the former organization. I understand that's not going to be their model going forward. We also understand that there are going to be specific research groups within Toronto Global that are going to focus, for example, on different regions within the GTA, so Halton Region, Peel Region, theoretically having a greater understanding of the different geographic areas. We will not at this point be participating in any of those trade missions, though.
Okay, thank you.
All right, perhaps we could have a motion to receive. Councillor O'Meara, thank you. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? Carried. That brings us to item 6, the proposed Halton District School Board High School, Nayagawa Boulevard and Dundas Street West, and you have a report from the Community Development Commission. And we have Charles McConnell standing by to give us a presentation. Oh, and there's been an addition to the recommendation, which I'm sure you've all got in front of you, that the Halton District School Board be requested to finalize as expeditiously as possible the preferred option for the design of the proposed secondary school, so as to release the landowners at the northwest corner of Dundas Street West and Nayagawa Boulevard from any obligation to convey lands to the school board, and that town staff work cooperatively with the school board to assist in the finalization of the preferred option, and a report be brought back to council providing an update on the status of the foregoing. Mr. McConnell, we're all ears.
Thank you, Your Worship, members of council. So this report is in response to the Halton District School Board advising that they wish to proceed with the acquisition of lands to facilitate the development of a high school in the proximity of the northwest corner of Dundas Street West and Nayagawa Boulevard. And this report can be found on page 193 of tonight's agenda. So the Halton District School Board has specifically indicated that they wish to proceed with the acquisition of a total of approximately 6.2 hectares of land in order to facilitate the construction of the high school. This slide illustrates the total parcel of land identified for acquisition. 3.8 hectares of the required land, which fronts onto Dundas Street, are owned by the Serbian Church, and the remaining 2.4 hectares are owned by the town and presently form part of the 16-mile sports complex. The authority of the Halton District School Board to acquire the lands for school purposes comes from the North Oakville East Secondary Plan, in which a public school symbol is overlaid on the Dundas Urban Core designation, again as illustrated in the plan in front of you. So the Halton District School Board has identified this as the preferred option for the layout of the future high school and the outdoor running track. This option meets the objective that would allow the high school to locate on a campus with the town arena and fields. The school board would have to undertake a number of initiatives, such as finalizing the acquisition of the 2 parcels of land, initiate the rezoning of the lands to permit the high school, and participate in the necessary upgrades to the local infrastructure, such as roads and local sanitary sewers and water supply. So on that basis, Mr. Chairman, we're putting forward this recommendation that you have in front of you, in addition to the one that is in front of you as well.
Thank you very much. Councillor Knoll.
Thank you, Worship. First of all, I want to thank the staff for working with Councillors Grant and I on coming up with that additional wording that you read into the record today. I think it's important that we somehow tie together, even if it's in this report mechanism, the release of the residual parcels that have been tied up for so long, and I appreciate that staff are helping us with that. My question, first of all, is to the best of your knowledge at this time, is this the extent of the land that they wish to acquire? Because there is no indication that the properties at 1013 Dundas or 3056 Nayagawa are any way impacted by this current plan. In fact, 1013 Dundas, there's a letter in existence from the school board specifically releasing that land from that overlay. So are you aware of any needs to acquire potentially that property at 3056 Nayagawa? That's still in question?
To my knowledge, this is the extent of the lands that are required by the school board. Although Ms. Close, you may want to speak to that.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we are relying on the school board to identify the lands that they need. It is their plan. They have on a preliminary basis, as Charlie has set out these lands, but they have not yet finalized all of their plans in terms of their parking requirements, how the school's located, all those layout issues that they need to. So I can't confirm that they have definitively said that it is just the Serbian property they require. They may indeed require more, which may explain why they have only sent a letter to the property at the corner releasing them and not to the McGowans. So we would hope that they would finalize that fairly soon so that the McGowans could get on with their property.
The drawing that's contained on page 4 of the report and 196 of the agenda, was that a drawing that was prepared by the school board or by the town? That's the site plan, proposed site plan.
I see Chris Mark at the back of the room, because this has been very much a
Chris Mark.
joint effort with Community Services in looking at the overall park. I believe this drawing was actually prepared by the school board in terms of their requirements. It was based on a long-standing relationship we've had with the school board to try and move forward with the plans. So there had been some preliminary work that we had done, and I think they had picked it up and produced these last set of drawings, unless Chris wanted to correct me on that.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, the drawing that you see before you is actually from the school board. All we did was confirm the size of the parcel of land that they need for their school campus to work.
So based on the fact that this is the drawing, it appears that they're not anticipating taking any land from the 3056, because it appears that it's actually following the borders of the property, the Serbian Church property and the town's property. Would that be an accurate assessment of what I'm looking at?
That's correct, although it is a school board plan, and but that's the information they've given us to date.
Okay. So thank you, Mr. Mark. I don't have anything more that I think you can help with. The actual overlay that exists on the official plan designation for this land, who put that there and who can remove it?
So this is the overlay that existed since the establishment of the North Oakville East Secondary Plan. And there's policies that correspond to that that says the town will work cooperatively with the school boards to establish a high school in this general location. So this process that we're undertaking now will go a long way to implementing that. So during the next update of the official plan, if the school exists, there would no longer be a need for that overlay to exist on that policy document.
So are you essentially saying it's our call to remove that overlay?
Well, we would work through you, your worship. We would certainly work in consultation with the school board. But again, if the school does exist, there'd be no need for it. And certainly from a staff perspective, we would acknowledge that and remove that overlay from that plan.
Okay, thank you. Slightly different tact now, and that is with respect to the piece of this that actually has us entering into negotiations for our portion of the land. So the recommendation is to authorize staff to enter negotiations. I assume that once negotiations are concluded, that a report will come back to council for final approval on the disposition of those lands, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Can I propose slightly different wording for this motion then to provide us with a little more oomph to get our point across? And that would be, and for you,
Certainly.
your worship and the clerk, first of all, we've all agreed, I think, to remove the words as expeditiously as possible, just because it seems to be a little wishy-washy there. And so that the word, it would end finalize and then begin again so to finalize the preferred option. And the second piece I'm proposing, and this is new to you, it just came up to me during the meeting. After brought back to council, it would read, before or at the time of a recommendation relating to the final disposition of land as contemplated in this resolution. So essentially what I'm saying is that this motion would essentially say that we would require that the school board report back to us and a staff report back to council on their plans on this particular property before we actually approve the disposition of the land. So that's, I would ask that well, I'll make the motion. I'll move the entire motion with that as the amendment to that piece that I introduced.
Can we put that up?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. Thanks. And so having read that, does the commissioner, the director, or anybody else on the bench have a concern with that, the way I've worded that?
No,
Okay.
no concerns.
Thank you, Worship. I may have more questions. I think we have a delegation representing the McGowans. I may have more questions later, but I'm done for now. Thank you. Ignore the addresses. Those were just my scribble notes.
Before or at the time of a recommendation relating to the final disposition of land as contemplated in this resolution?
Yes. I'm very pleased that you were able to read my writing.
Okay. Well, long practice, I guess. Madam Clerk, would you, oh, sorry, Councillor Elgar.
Yeah, thank you, through Mayor Burton. Mr. McConnell, can you flip back to the slide you had up there showing the property?
Okay, I guess we'll just flip off of that. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Can you show me where the property line is? Because I'm looking at the road, and I'm just trying to figure out whose property is that road on?
So I'm not sure if I have a, I'll try to use the cursor. No. No, there's laser pointer. I'll try to use the laser pointer, so I believe it is
That doesn't
this.
help me.
No?
Anyway,
All right.
okay, no,
My apologies.
okay, I'll turn around.
All right, so I believe there's a dotted and dashed line running in that direction.
So is the road on that, whose property is that road on then? It looks to me like it's pushed over onto the property to the east. That's all I'm trying to confirm.
That's correct. Bearing in mind, this is a conceptual plan as well. So the ultimate location of that road would be determined through the development process to determine its exact location. As shown here, yes, the majority of the road is to the east of that property line, with a tiny bit on the Serbian church lands.
So why would, it's their proposal, why are they shoving it on somebody else's property?
And this is just a conceptual plan.
I realize that, but
indicates
it's an
that
important
location.
piece of it. Like, that's a very important piece of that, of their plan.
Right.
Okay, I thank you for that. Now, the dotted red line that I see, what is that? Is that the regional setbacks for Dundas that they are going to grab from both of these properties and up also?
Through your worship, this is, as Mr. Mark had indicated, this was the plan that was provided to the town by the school board. So I might have to defer to Mr. Mark again to speak to the nature of those lines.
Yeah, no, because there's a fair amount of property that has
Councillor?
the yellow and the red line. I hope we know what it is.
The question before council is whether we want to sell the land to the north to the board to accommodate the school. And that has, if you do it, that has the effect of reducing the amount of land they need to take from the McGowans. But as for the identity of the red lines, I'm not sure that they bear on the question before you, which is, do you want to cooperate with the school board providing some of the town land to take the pressure off of the McGowans or not?
Well, Your Worship, I absolutely support what Councillor Knowles proposed motion. I'm just wondering when I see colors like that, what it means, that's all.
That's the one you to the bottom.
Yeah. Thank you. Anyway, I now realize at this point, the road is shoved, nothing is on the Serbian church property whatsoever. Thank you.
Others? All right, we have registered delegations. Madam Clerk, would you call the registered delegations?
The first delegation speaking to this issue is David Camper, the planner with Glenn Schnarr and Associates.
Mr. Capper, welcome.
Thank you, Your Worship.
You're a regular here.
Thank you, sir. Members of council, just for the record, the McGowans are registered as the second delegation to speak to the item. I believe we should get everything done in one delegation, so there's no need for them to speak.
Could you just address the microphone a little stronger?
Absolutely. Sorry about that.
If you want me to hear you, anyway.
Through you, Your Worship, my name is David Capper. I'm a planning consultant with Glenn Schnarr and Associates. For the record, our mailing address is 10 Kingsbridge Garden Circle, Suite 700, Mississauga, Ontario, L5R 3K6. And I'm appearing on behalf of Jim and Diana McGowan, whom are the owners of the property at 3056 Niagara Boulevard. And it is the property that is immediately east of the proposed school site. As background, I've reviewed the staff report with the McGowans. We've gone over it in detail, and there's a couple of issues that we hope to bring to your attention this evening. The McGowans have owned their property since 1979, and they built their house in 1988. The McGowan property is about 3.75 hectares and is designated as Dundas Urban Core Area, and it's an area, as you know, that's contemplated for high-density mixed-use types of development. The McGowan property, as mentioned this evening, is also subject to a school site overlay, and what that means is that the entire northwest corner of Dundas and Neagawa is reserved for either the Dundas Urban Core designation or a school site. And according to your official plan policies, the town policies require that the town shall encourage the reservation and ultimate location of sites for publicly funded schools adjacent to parks or other recreation facilities. So given the school site designation, the McGowan property is very much frozen for development purposes until such time that the school board makes a decision as to whether they're going to acquire the property or not. So tonight's agenda item and the recommendation to council is certainly a good thing for the McGowans from that perspective. To date, the McGowans have been approached on numerous occasions, and by numerous I mean 48 offers of purchase of sale agreement. As far as I'm aware, every single one of those offers of purchase of sale has fallen through on the basis that there's uncertainty as to whether the lands can ever be developed for Dundas Urban Core land uses. In 2015, February of 2015, we held a pre-consultation meeting with the town of Oakville regarding the development of the property, in accordance with the official plan policies that are in force and effect, but subject to a zoning bylaw amendment, which for all parcels in North Oakville is required. During the pre-consultation meeting, we were advised by staff from Halton District School Board that the McGowan property was identified as a candidate secondary school site, and that they would be recommending to council and the planning department refusal of any planning applications on the lands on the basis that the application is premature prior to the school board making a decision on their desired school site. Furthermore, we were advised by representatives of the Halton District School Board.
Mr. Camper, the matter before council is the proposal to sell land to the school board by the town.
Absolutely.
Are you and your client in support or in opposition to that?
To you, Mr. Mayor, we're absolutely in support of the recommendation to council. However, as was discussed between council members and staff this evening, the project does actually impact the property that's owned by the McGowans. The area in question that everyone is, if you'd allow me just to fold this. The area in question as to whether or not the road is on the proposed Serbian church lands or the McGowans lands, the area that's highlighted here in red is on the McGowans property, and what you'll notice is the access driveway which leads up to the 16 Mile Creek Sports Complex is wholly contained within the McGowan lands. So access to the property, although there are right-in, right-out locations on Dundas, the full moves access comes through the McGowan's property to the
You
school
do
site.
understand that these matters are not before council?
Absolutely, Your Worship.
Can I ask you to focus your remarks on the matter that's before council?
I will. So what I would say to council is that given the uncertainty with respect to the development of these lands with respect to the school site, and that uncertainty has existed since 2008, the McGowans are retired. Mr. McGowan's 72 years old. This is their single largest asset that they cannot dispose of because the school site overlay exists. If council is supportive of the staff recommendation that the lands be disposed of and included in the development for the school site, we would appreciate council's earliest opportunity to remove that school site overlay, either by way of a council-initiated official plan amendment, would be the first and preferred option. The second opportunity would be for that amendment to be included in the school board's applications to rezone this property. And then the third and and the least desirable in terms of timing, but it achieves the same objective, would be that through the OP review, when you line up your livable Oakville plan with your North Oakville plan, that you treat school sites in North Oakville as you do in livable Oakville, in the livable Oakville plan. And that is that none of the school sites in the livable Oakville are identified with a school site overlay, and it's a generic policy that allows for school sites in all residential designations. So that's a roundabout way, Your Worship, and I apologize for that, of voicing our support for the motion before, the recommendation before council to dispose of the lands, but given that our clients are affected by the school, the ultimate development of the school, we'd appreciate council's consideration for the removal of the school site overlay.
Mr. Capper, I know you're a professional planner and you're aware that we're conducting an official plan review. And wouldn't that be the place to bring this request? Or for a second time, can I ask you to speak to the matter before council?
To you, Mr. Mayor, our position and our request of council. Position is that we support the recommendation that's proposed by planning staff, that the town dispose of the school, of the 16 Mile Creek lands. However, with that, we would request council's consideration for the removal of the secondary school site overlay.
Thank you. I've heard that 3 times, and I'm losing sympathy, frankly.
Okay.
You know, we have pretty clear, well-established processes for the official plan. This is a simple matter to assist the McGowans, and I give up with my advice to you. Councillor Knoll?
I want to try to get this back on track for a second. Can you lift the report, the map off of that, the motion? Do you read the codicil to the motion that was made? The amendment to the motion that was made, that the very blurry motion that was made? It's getting late.
Oh, there we go.
Okay, so I'm asking, or Councillor Grant and I have worked this out so that we're asking that a report come back concurrently with the recommendation to dispose of lands with respect to the McGowan's property. Does this advance your client's interests reasonably?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it does.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions of Mr. Capper? Thank you, Mr. Capper, for your information.
And thank you for your patience, sir.
Councillor Adams.
I have a question for our staff about the town land and the use of the space that was intended for recreational spaces and how that'll be replaced or dealt with in the future. Do we have because we've had, as you know, we've had every partnership request under the sun coming forward to make use of space at 16 Mile, and everything from cricket to swimming to soccer to gymnastics to the list goes on. So I just want to know how it would impact those proposals, and how do we get made whole with respect to the financial cost of replacing the land in some other location?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we have looked at a series of proposals for the North Park site. I think our original position, and has been, that any loss of land on this particular site would impact those facilities. But over time, we've worked with the school boards in terms of establishing a pocket of land that they may be able to use for the fields. There is an opportunity for some shared use with them. We have the reciprocal agreement with schools already, so it's not a complete loss with the field up onto the town's lands because we can use those facilities as well. We still have opportunities along the frontage, along Naigawa, in terms of incorporating those other partnerships. So at the end of the day, when you look at the urban core frontage along Dundas, the opportunities on the balance of the property, we felt that this was a reasonable arrangement that would still preserve the town's opportunities for other uses on the site, as well as implement the overall intent of the secondary plan.
Would we not have more opportunities if the site didn't use part of the town's land?
we would have more opportunities, but when you look at if you slide the school over to all of the frontage lands, one, it doesn't take up all the lands. You're left with a very small portion of lands that you can do really nothing with that fulfills the urban core designation that's in the official plan. So that you're not achieving your official plan objectives if you pull it all off of the town's lands.
So the concern is we'd have an orphan site on the corner.
Yes.
Okay.
Any others? Is there another delegation?
We did have Mr. McGowan registered as a delegation. Did he still wish to speak?
Good evening, Mayor, Councillors. My name is Jim McGowan, and my wife here is Diane, my son Kevin. Mr. Capper was hired by us, and he's done an excellent job. And the concern is what is left between our two properties, on the east side of our property line and on the west side of the property line. Is it always ours, or is it some going to be lost? And we can't find that question out. So whether you vote to do your proposal, of your racetrack, I call it, that's okay with us, but then is it going to impact our property? Yes or no? And we can't find the answer. Thank you. That's all I have to say. And if you want to refer any questions, talk to Mr. Capper. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McGowan, for your information. Mr. Closey, I have two words for the council and the staff, and that comes when we're dealing with cooperating with the school board. And those words are Queen Elizabeth Park, the three words, Queen Elizabeth Park. And actually, there's many another school property where they've put us into the difficulty of abandoning school sites. So in your discussions with the school board, can you do anything to get the land back down the road if they abandon the site?
So that is certainly, if we can take that as a staff direction in terms of looking at how we negotiate the sale of the property to potentially build some type of first right of refusal into it in some way, so that if they decide not to proceed with the high school site, we haven't completely lost those lands. So we could look at that in terms of the property sale agreement.
Seems to me that what Councillor Adams was doing in his questions was seeking to remind us of the need to protect the taxpayer here. With that, I'm happy to support Councillor Knoll's motion. Is there any other speakers? Shall I call the motion? All in favor? Any against? It carries. Thank you, everybody. The next item for us is item 7, the Livable Oakville Official Plan Reviews Council Subcommittee Minutes. I wonder if there's a motion to accept the minutes. Councillor O'Meara, all in favor? Opposed, if any, the minutes are adopted. Similarly, for Heritage Oakville minutes, Councillor Hutchins, all in favor? Opposed, if any, the minutes are adopted. Councillor Elgar.
Yeah, on the minutes, we would still be coming back to council with what we were going to make changes to, recommendations of what was presented today?
This was not today's minutes.
Yes.
This was
Okay,
the previous
from
minutes.
the previous. Okay, thank you.
We're fast, but we're not that fast. Can I get a motion to go past the hour? Councillor Lischina, all those in favor? Opposed, if any, that carries. Now, I need a motion to resolve into a closed meeting session for the purpose of dealing with a matter pertaining to litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality, and for receiving advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose, with respect to item C2, OMB verbal update. Councillor Lapworth, all in favor? Carried. Thank you to the members of the public who are with us here tonight, and that does complete the agenda, except for the passing of the bylaws, so there shouldn't be any surprises after we come out of camera on this item.